Welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. So as I mentioned on parts 1 and 2, I had the pleasure of speaking twice at LeadsCon's Connect to Convert conference, and they also asked me to podcast live from the expo hall, which was filled with most of the conference attendees. And I'm releasing the series of interviews that are recorded while there that were broadcast over the intercom. And this is part 3 with another friend, excellent speaker, and another previous interview from way back on episode 85. I'll add a link so you can find her previous episode as well. Nancy Harhut is a creative marketer, behavioral scientist, an excellent speaker who also led a couple of sessions at 2019's Connect to Convert conference. And on this episode, we'll discuss behavioral science, lead generation, emojis, neuroscience, white lab coats, Martin Lindstrom, the von Resdorf effect, controversial sharks, and a lot more. So let's tune in to a behavioral scientist with a shark who's behaving well on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Welcome back to A Shark's Perspective at LeadsCon's Connect to Convert conference. I'm here with the outstanding speaker, Nancy Harhut. So Nancy, welcome back to the show.
Hey,
and welcome to the live version of the conference. So ecstatic to have you here. So what have you enjoyed about the conference so far?
So, the conference has actually been really incredible. I've spoken twice, so obviously I enjoyed that, but I've also sat in on several sessions and picked up some really good content. So I have to say it's been a win-win for me.
You already spoke this morning?
I spoke this morning. I did.
I've been in here.
I know, you've been busy. Yeah, no, I spoke with Mary Hart. We did Email Fight Club, and that was a lot of fun.
What was the topic on the session? Tell us more about Fight Club and how you came up with the name for that session.
Sure. Well, so it was called Email Fight Club, and I have to give credit to my co-presenter, Mary Hart, who actually came up with the title. And she said the first rule of Fight Club is we're going to talk about everything email. So we dove into all the different aspects of email. She started out with some really good, useful tips, and then some very interesting case studies, like head-to-head subject line test with results, which were fascinating. And then I wrapped things up with 5 moves that will give your emails a fighting chance, and those moves were all based on behavioral science. So they would give you an added advantage in terms of trying to get people to open your email and engage with it, click through, respond.
So high level, what were those tips? If you were to do another shorter session with email tips, what do you think are the sort of the top tips to get people to get their emails opened up?
So, one of them is to just make your email look a little different in the inbox. If you think about it, people are, scrolling through, they're scanning the different emails, and if there's anything you can do to make yours look different, there's something that social scientists refer to as the von Resdorf effect. We notice things that are different. So I quoted some world data statistics about using brackets or parentheses in your emails, or using a number, but you use the actual number, not spell it out, or using the ellipses, ... or having a subject line end in a question mark, or initial capping each word. Their data shows that all of those will actually increase your opening rate, and I believe the reason why is because it makes your subject line look a little bit different. Not everyone has a number or ellipses or question marks. I also talked about words that attract the eye, words like new, or having somebody's name, or the word alert.
Do you do a lot of bullet points and emojis in those as well?
So I'm a big bullet point fan for emails.
I like bullet points and subject lines if you can create it. I was trying to look for one on my phone to show you right now. Promise it wasn't multitasking, but know that a lot of people are using that, and it's funny how those little tags we used to use in websites, you can take that and apply it to a lot of things like email and just make emails pop better.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's all about making them pop,
Yeah.
And then you mentioned emojis, and it's funny, if you had asked me maybe 2-3 years ago what I thought of them, I'd be like, they have to be right for your brand. I think there are very few instances where they would really work. I've come full circle on that, Kenneth. The data shows that
we're both so young, though. We appreciate that as older millennials.
I love it, yeah. But the data shows that the emojis are getting engagement. People notice them, it makes the email stand out. So, go for it.
Yeah, if anything, if it'll help, if you can take emojis and use those as lead generation tools, I'm all for them. So, what have you seen over the evolution of the conferences? Because you've been speaking at LeadsCon and now second year of Connect to Convert, but LeadsCon Las Vegas and LeadsCon New York, you've been speaking at those shows for quite some time. What have you sort of seen as the evolution of lead generation as it applies to behavioral science, or maybe it's vice versa, but are people embracing it more, embracing it less? Because a lot of the things that we're talking about with words like new, it seems like we still run into the habits. I talked about this in my own session. There's so many things that you can recreate as new. You can take last year's same campaign, call it new and updated for 2019, and it will get people to open, pay attention to. Yet a lot of people on the brand side and a lot of agencies don't know that or don't want to apply it, and then they wonder why those rates are static or they're slipping.
Yeah, it's a shame, and I think that it's a shame that people aren't aware of that or don't want to apply it, but I think more and more people are having their eyes open to these techniques and how they can be used. And with behavioral science, it's almost relatively new to marketing, but there are instances of it being used in healthcare and in politics
Absolutely.
and education, and now I think marketers are starting to embrace it. I spoke this morning about email. Yesterday I spoke about direct mail. You're
right.
mentioning the evolution of LeadsCon, and it seems like what's old is new again. LeadsCon specifically asked me, or Connect to Convert specifically asked if my business partner, John Sisson, and I would talk about direct mail. So yesterday we did a full session about direct mail, and then this morning I joined Mary Hart and we spoke about email. And one of the questions that we got this morning was, with respect to these behavioral science techniques, are they only good for email, or do they apply across the board?
Yeah.
Which I thought was a really fascinating question, a really smart question, and it speaks to the mindset, I think, of the attendees here. They're working in a number of different channels, and they want to have the absolute best and newest information and apply it across the board. And of course, my answer was, you can use it in telemarketing and DRTV and online, offline, and even in conversations. They're just great techniques to have.
Well, and that brings up a wonderful point. Do you find that most people are taking these best of practices and maybe too much pointing them towards one channel?
That's a good question. I think, people see the world through their own lens, and if you're
Exactly.
doing nothing but direct mail, you're going to say this is for direct mail. If you're
Exactly.
doing nothing but email, you're going to, if you're an integrated marketer, as so many of us are, you're going to start to say, if it worked there, can it also work here?
Well, and I'm constantly trying to connect the dots, and this is not the best example, but I'll just use one for an emoji. If you use a happy face emoji, you can also, through the right triggers, one, it'll help you to open up an email, and you can test it out, one email versus another, and you'll see that all day long. But I also think it helps continue that brand message, if you will, and if you apply that same, for this example, emoji on a direct mail piece, on a website, on something else, if you pull that in and that's always your constant message, it can help open all the different channels more.
Yeah,
Does that make sense? I don't know if that's necessarily phrased the right way, but if you integrate an emoji throughout that messaging to where it's not static, to where it's not poisoned, but you want people to constantly have that trigger to help them be more responsive to your brand ad.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think they would maybe start to associate that particular one with
Exactly.
your brand.
Yeah.
And I also wonder, let's take it offline. What if you had a direct mail piece, a postcard or a letter, and you had the emoji on it? Not only would you track back to the brand if the brand was using it in other channels, but I wonder if it would also just prime
Affects
you.
that sentiment. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like, it's a smiley face. I'm smiling now.
Well, I look so much at attribution and how all the pieces fit together, and not just from a customer journey on the way in, but how does you take that and then optimize your advertisements. I think it's really important, having worked on the brand side, there's a lot of brands that suffer, negative vibes. They get beat up. I almost think, I do this all the time on my social. I use a shark emoji. And in a way, it sort of, ties back to my shark brand. And I'm wondering if more brands should test that throughout all their different pieces. And if you put a smiley face, maybe it helps prime the brain and changes their sentiment as well. There's not a lot of people that are going down that territory. They're applying it strictly towards email, but I would love to see the different tactics be used across the different channels as well,
Yeah, and I think there's some testing opportunity there, and I know your listeners aren't going to be aware of this, so I'm just going to point it out. You're wearing a shark shirt, which I love. All these different sharks on it, which just, as you said, totally underscores the brand.
Well, I didn't want to wear the ones showing all my tattoos of sharks, so I left off wearing the tank top T-shirt. But people that know me, that have seen me dive or gone on dives, they know that's who I truly am. I'm just going to have to use an emoji now to help tell the story a little bit further. So, what channel excites you the most with how it applies to neuroscience principles and what you spend so much time talking about? Not just the ones that we know of in conferences that drive conversions, but where are you most excited with what you see capabilities of today?
Oh, wow. I love this whole idea of decision science and the decision defaults that people use, and I love the idea of marketers applying them. So where we have the most real estate would be where I'm most excited. So if you're doing a long form TV spot or a video, or if you're doing a direct mail letter, you've just got more real estate to use some of these techniques, which is kind of exciting. I was chatting with a gentleman from another agency, and he was working on some TV, and he was talking about a test they ran where they just had a little picture in the background in the TV spot. They didn't zero in on it, zoom in on it, didn't reference it or point to it, but it was just there, and having it there had an impact on the charity contributions that the TV spot was able to raise, because they tested it with and without. So, anytime you've got the real estate to be able to experiment with some of these things and maybe add a few of these different triggers in, that's what really excites me.
Yeah, it's a great point. So how are you seeing this applied in TV, where I've spent a ton of time driving traffic? Where do you see that?
So some of it is what you show to prime people. Some of it is dialing up urgency with, you've got to respond by a certain time or you're going to lose out. Some of it is for certain products, the idea of scarcity or exclusivity, for people who aspire to, to a certain lifestyle or to be included in a particular group. So I think there are a lot of different opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. And I one of the slides I talk about at every conference, and I used it again yesterday, I talk a little bit about the relevancy of ads and where ads are trusted, and trying to apply some of these techniques to prime the brain, especially, and we call it priming. It sounds wonderful, but really it's just ad optimization. I don't know what the name du jour is, but your ads will perform better when they're more of an integrated approach. And I've seen a ton of data on it myself, have run a lot of those campaigns, but I'm probably most excited about where neuroscience can help deliver more performance in the TV space as well. I don't think we do enough of it. We've just got to tie it on the back end with where it converts, whether it's on somebody using their mobile device, because I talked a lot about Mary Meeker's report yesterday about how people are, 88% of the time when they're watching TV, they're holding a phone in their hands, and how that primes somebody to go convert on an ad later.
Yeah. I mean,
there's not enough data in there.
But there are interesting cross-channel opportunities. Though.
Absolutely.
You're sitting there, you're watching TV, and then the ad comes up, and you see the URL or the phone number or both, whatever, and you can take action, and it's like it's in the moment. It's social scientists talk about something known as hot state decision making, where
Exactly.
your emotions are raised, generally speaking, your emotions are raised, generally speaking, in a positive way, and you're excited or you're interested or you're happy, and so you act on it right away. And so if you see a TV spot that activates something in you, like, that's what I want, I would really love that, or that would be really helpful for me, or that would solve a problem, right in the moment, you just grab that mobile device and respond.
I'm really interested is, can we tie two neuro triggers at the same time to, something as simple, again, I'm going to use the analogy of an emoji, but can you show a happy face on a TV ad, and the moment they go to search, it's not a great example, but they see that emoji and it helps them convert, rather than just repeating the offer. There's some interesting ways that we could go about applying this, and maybe that's not the best. Maybe they get an email within 4 hours that has that same neuro trigger, if I can call it that, that maybe it's that same face, but it's just basic marketing to tie that messaging together.
Yeah, no, and it's the repetition, I think, like you said, you tie it together. Particularly when people go online, they want to know that they've landed in the right place, and any quick visual cue that you can give them that reassures them, yes, you're where you want to be. You saw, this impetus, and that sent you here, and you're going to find what you're looking for here. You're in the right place. Anytime we can do that, we're reassuring people, we're, making them feel confident, we're removing friction. These are all very good things to do.
Well, obviously, we're very young marketers, but to the advice you give, because you're speaking at a ton of conferences all over the country, and internationally as well, what's the advice you give people where do they start to learn neuroscience principles to better their marketing? Because I think, a lot of times for all conferences, you want to tactically be able to take 3 or 4 or 5 things away. But a lot of what we're talking about, most people don't know how to. Tom talked about it earlier. We don't know how to wrap your arms around data when you go back. You don't know how to wrap your arms around attribution when you go back. These are massive, big grabs. Neuroscience, as simple as it is, it takes a real shift in your learning. And it's breaking free of what people have been doing that has gotten us in the position we are now. How does somebody go about starting to learn these principles that you speak and live and breathe about?
Well,
what's the Get Started package?
I think I would strongly recommend that the first thing they do is come to one of my sessions, because I
There
will
you go.
give them very specific, actionable tactics that they can take back to the office the very next day.
Well, one, I couldn't agree with you more, because I'm a big fan of your sessions.
Thank you. So, but self-promotion aside, there are some good books that I would recommend.
Yeah.
Certain authors that I follow. Robert Cialdini, I think he's got a number of different books out. They're all fabulous. One of them is called Influence Science and Practice. Great place to start. Nudge by Thaler and Sunstein, also very good. Dan Ariely has a book called Predictably Irrational. I think if one were to start there, that would provide a really nice foundation and just start to open the world up. And then there are, e-newsletters that a lot of these authors run, or weekly columns that they write, or podcasts that they have that
Like a
people
shark's
can start
perspective.
like a shark's perspective, for example. Yes.
Well, I'll tell you another one that I was just thinking of. I know you used one of those books in one of your presentations.
I reference, I think, probably all 3 of them, and then more on top of
I
that.
reference in some of them, but I also reference, just to get more to the layperson marketer, but he's somewhere in between, Martin Lindstrom.
Oh, sure, biology.
With
Yes.
biology, he's brilliant, and he helps translate a lot of that message as well to where, I don't know, the common marketer, not necessarily is the right phrase to use, but it's a place to help them understand that bridge.
That's a really good point, because we're talking about.
And he's brilliant at it.
Oh yes, he absolutely is. We're talking about neuroscience
Yeah.
and neuromarketing, and it sounds a little daunting. You're like, what the heck is that all about?
So
And,
you wear a white lab coat all the time, right, as a neuroscientist?
Actually, I don't. You know who does wear a white lab coat is.
I know him.
Yeah. Brian.
From Austin, Texas.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Brian, the conversion scientist. But what I was going to say is that, you hear these phrases and they sound a little daunting, and you're like, I don't know, neuro. But when you start to delve into it, a lot of what you read is going to start to validate things that you as a marketer have tested your way into, or that, by, with years of experience, by instinct, you've started to apply. And so you're suddenly going to find yourself having a better understanding of how people react, and a better understanding of why certain tests have worked. But then as you continue to explore the area and the discipline, you're going to start to find new ideas that you haven't stumbled upon, that you haven't figured out on your own, and that's when the real magic starts to happen. But it's a nice balance of having the understanding and the ammunition to fight for an idea that you instinctively know is going to work, and then finding some new areas to pursue that you probably wouldn't have thought of on your own.
Well, other than reading those books, I also tell people to go back and look at it, because if a lot of them are starting to A/B test, it's using these phrases like new and exclusive and all these different things, and just applying a bullet point or an emoji or something like that to traffic. Not enough people are really doing that. They run with their same static offers, and then they're paying more and more each year to a search engine.
Yeah, no, the testing thing, and that's one of the points that my co-presenter Mary made this morning, is do those tests, do the A/B tests. That just you have an idea, get out there and test it, because sometimes you're passionate about this idea, you're convinced it's going to work, and it doesn't, and you're surprised. You really don't know until you get the idea out there, and sometimes the exact opposite happens. You think this is never in a million years going to work, but the boss is making me do it or whatever, and oh my gosh, it does work. So getting out there and testing is really let the market tell you.
Agreed.
Don't let your own biases intervene.
So, Nancy, I've asked
Yes.
you this question before. I'm going to ask you again. What's your favorite kind of shark and why?
I'm sorry, what's my favorite kind of
Shark.
shark? So this is going to be controversial. So we're here in...
You have a controversial shark. Okay.
Well, my answer may be a little controversial. We're here in Massachusetts, and Cape Cod has...
A lot of great whites.
Has had a lot of great whites, and we've had shark attacks, and we've had some deaths. And it's a part of the Cape that hasn't been accustomed to seeing this kind of activity. And so we're, speaking as someone from the area who enjoys Cape Cod, we're a little nervous about the whole shark activity. So I think my favorite kind of shark is one that stays away from me when I'm in the water. And I understand we're sharing the water.
Or
that's
a podcast
fine.
host.
Well, a podcast host, that's a very different kind of a shark, a land shark, if you will. Very safe right here sitting next to me.
Yeah, agreed. So, are you ready for the 5 most interesting, important questions you're going to be asked today?
Absolutely.
All right. Number 1, Batman or Iron Man?
Batman.
All right. Number 2, a conference in Las Vegas or a conference in Boston? Sort of think LeadsCon Las Vegas versus Connect to Convert in Boston.
So, if we're just talking geography, it's always fun to travel. So that, for me, would be Vegas because I live in Boston. But both of the conferences, LeadsCon and Connect to Convert, are both really, really good. So
Yeah, and I know we're both excited about going to LeadsCon again next March. So, number 3, lead generation or content marketing?
lead gen.
Okay. And number 4, email or direct mail?
That's a tough one. Email.
Today's presentation was email.
Yes.
So
Yesterday was direct mail.
You're safe. Number 5, and the most important question you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread?
Cornbread.
All right, good answer. So, Nancy, where can people find out more about you? You're not speaking for a third time today, are you?
No, I just did 2 sessions at this conference,
Okay.
but next month I will be at Digital Summit right here in Boston, and I have Marketing Profs B2B Forum coming up in DC this fall. So a couple of different conferences coming up. You can always follow me on Twitter at nharhut, NHARHUT, or LinkedIn or Facebook. Always
All right.
happy to connect with your listeners.
Awesome. Thank you again for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective.
Thank you for having me, Shark.
So there was my conversation with Nancy Harhut, a creative marketer, behavioral scientist, and excellent speaker who also led a couple of sessions at 2019's Connect to Convert conference. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with her. First, make your emails look different. The von Resdorf effect should tell you enough. Use something that will make us look. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It's a lot of simple things that include brackets, caps, ellipses, question marks, emojis, bullet points, words that attract the eye, and a lot more. Think of it simply this way. You're looking at your phone and you see, say, 10 emails. Look at what makes any one of those stand out. Usually it's something visually that you notice rather than just always the copy, which is still very important. Sometimes it's simply how we just make the words pop. Second, behavioral science applies with all channels. A lot of people limit this to email, and as Nancy correctly pointed out, a lot of marketers only see how something like this works through their own lens. However, it works across all channels, so consider integrating it. Per my not necessarily great example, test using an emoji in an email and see the lift. Then take that same emoji and use it on other channels. Continue that imagery across your campaign. Use those triggers, if you will, test them and see if it helps resonate across all channels with sentiment and activation. Just make sure to use a smiley face at least, will you? Third, I love when Nancy pointed out, consider using these principles and test where you have the most real estate in quotes, but where you have literally the biggest and largest layout to do more in creating these behavioral triggers. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you for the privilege of your time. It doesn't take a scientist to tell you to behave well. So let's get connected and convert on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.